Welcome to the 2010 Nebula Awards Ceremony.
30 years ago, there was this little company called Tor that just started out. Tom Doherty founded Tom Doherty Associates in 1980 after a career that included Pocket and Simon & Schuster, Tempo and Ace. As president and publisher, he's now got Tor and Forge and Orb and Starscape and Tor Teen and Tor Classics, and of course is quite honestly one of the most influential publishers in our field.
It's been a great 50-odd years, 50 years of working on books I loved with wonderfully talented people, with the authors, with their editors, the artists, the agents, the sales and marketing people, with my daughters, of who I am so proud, really all the folks at Tor. Thank you, SFWA. You who have written the stories which have motivated the generations of my lifetime to dream and build and move beyond. For you to recognize my contribution to this field is a very special thing and very much appreciated. Thank you.
She's a writer, an editor, an artist. She has earned widespread acclaim for her promotion of the fantastic in the arts, notably through her founding of and continued work with Endicott Studio. She's published more than 40 books as author and editor, winning 9 World Fantasy Awards, the Mythopic Award, and the Bram Stoker Award. Her essays on myth, folklore, and mythic arts have appeared in magazines, book arts, art books, and anthologies in the United States and Europe. Though she cannot be with us this evening, we would like to present this to Terry Windling.
Terry writes, I feel quite overwhelmed by receiving this award. I'm deeply honored that it comes from SFWA, an organization filled with many of the best writers working in America today. And I'm especially honored and humbled to receive this award with Don Wollheim and Tom Doherty. I came to the New York publishing industry with a background in folklore studies and a love of fantasy art. I was barely 19 when Jim Bain took a chance on me and hired me at Ace Books. I've been working in the SF fantasy field ever since, for 3 decades now. I'm deeply grateful to this genre for giving me a home, and more than that, to giving a home to a whole generation of writers who, like me, have a particular passion for fantasy rooted in fairy tales, folklore, and myth. Since 1987, I've been running a nonprofit organization called the Endicott Studio, which supports the creation and study of mythic arts and educates young people about our worldwide mythic heritage. I was pleased that my work at Endicott has been mentioned in connection to this award, and I'd like to share the honor with Endicott's co-director, Midori Snyder, and our Endicott colleagues. I'd like to leave you with one of my favorite quotes from one of my favorite writers, Patricia McKillop. At its best, she says, fantasy rewards the reader with a sense of wonder about what lies within the heart of the commonplace world. The greatest tales are told over and over, in many ways, through centuries. Fantasy changes with the changing times, and yet it is still the oldest kind of tale in the world, for it began once upon a time, and we haven't heard the end of it yet.
A founding member of the Futurians, Donald A. Wollheim was active in early fandom, organizing the first science fiction convention, and had a profound influence on the development of 20th century science fiction. He published numerous short stories and novels, but is best remembered for his work in publishing. He published the Pocket Book of Science Fiction, the first paperback science fiction anthology, and the first book to include the words science fiction in the title in 1943. From 1947 to 1952, he was the first editor-in-chief of Avon's paperback line. He left there to work for Ace Magazine Company, where in 1953 he introduced science fiction to the Ace line. He went on to found Daw Books and helped launch many careers of science fiction and fantasy authors. From 1965 to 1971, he co-edited the annual anthology World's Best Science Fiction with Terry Carr, and continued with the annual World's Best Science Fiction from 1972 until his death in 1990. And for all these many achievements, he deserves our thanks and our remembrance. And I'm delighted to present the Solstice Award to Betsy Woolheim, accepting for her father, Donald A. Woolheim.
Well, thank you so much, Susan, and thank you to everyone at SFWA. My father really dedicated his life to science fiction. In the 1930s, he dropped out of college, much to the horror of his respected father, the doctor, to join a group of like-minded eccentrics in Brooklyn who wanted to write science fiction, and really never looked back. I don't think my grandfather ever really quite got over it, but my father never gave up, and I'm glad. And I think my father really felt this was his destiny. Thank you all so very much. My dad would have been so happy to get this. And he always thought of himself as a writer, despite the fact that, you know, he was really made the biggest achievements in editorial. He always thought of himself as a writer, so he would have been getting this from his fellow writers. So I thank you for that. Thank you.
Since the inception of SFWA, the organization has been propelled forward in everything it's done with the efforts of volunteers. Tonight we're going to honor two of the volunteers who have put a great deal of effort into making this organization what it is today. The first of these is Keith Stokes. He's being honored for his almost 16 years of service on multiple committees, managing the SFWA news alerts, ensuring the organization's membership is kept up to date with developments in the organization and the publishing industry with service awards for 2010. Stokes is a freelance photographer and travel writer, operates his own travel websites, and his genre publishing credits includes the SFWA Bulletin, Locus, and File 770. He helped found the Science Fiction and Fantasy Hall of Fame and was chairman of the Hall of Fame from 1996 to 2001. In addition to chairing and holding various staff and committee positions at regional and national science fiction conventions, he currently serves as secretary and treasurer of First Fandom and as president of the Dawn Patrol, a loose organization of more than 300 science fiction, space, and aviation enthusiasts from throughout the United States and Canada.
Thank you very much. My first involvement with SFWA was with the '97 Nebula Awards weekend. A good friend, Robin Wayne Bailey, was responsible for that weekend. Later that year, Robin had a successful battle with cancer, a very hard cancer, and I was really moved by the support and love and everything that the members of Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America did for Robin, and I wanted to find some small way to give back. And that was why I became involved with the website. I want to thank all of the officers that have supported me and worked with me over the years. I particularly want to thank the three webmasters that I worked with, starting with Melissa Michaels, going on to Graham Collins, and finishing up with Chris Hansen. Thank you very much.
The second SFWA Service Award tonight is going to Vonda N. McIntyre. She has been working on and off in various projects in various ways for SFWA from, I would say, going back to the late 70s, early 80s. She's done many, many things. Tonight she's being honored for her work on the SFWA website. Many of you know McIntyre has won the Hugo and Nebula Award. She's taught at numerous workshops. She's currently a member of Bookview Cafe, an author's co-op distributing its members' work in electronic form. And she's just an all-around wonderful, good person.
Vonda was very, very brief. She sent a little message saying that she really enjoyed designing the websites for people, and she missed a lot of the people that she worked with, and she wished everybody a great Nebula weekend, and
There you go.
thank you.
Long before there was the new weird, there was Neil Barrett Jr. The New York Review of Science Fiction called Neil's 1988 story, Stairs, possibly the most all-out weird story of the year. It didn't stop Stairs from winning that year's Theodore Sturgeon Memorial Award. Critics have said that Neil's stories defy any category or convention, but he has also been called a poet of post-apocalyptic fiction. Neil is not afraid to explore the dark side, but Neil's version of what follows Armageddon differs considerably from Cormac McCarthy or Neville Shute's visions of the aftermath. Neil has said of his fiction, "I write deep and dark, and I write light and funny, and they're both the same in my mind. Tragedy contains funny, funny contains tragedy. Serious things happen to my people, and funny things as well. Like life, okay? The way I write is simply my perspective on whatever the hell this living stuff is all about." Neil's career began almost exactly 50 years ago when his first two SF stories appeared in the August 1960 issues of Amazing and Galaxy. Since then, he's published over 50 books, in addition to post-Holocaust fiction that can be found in much of his short stories and in novels like Through Darkest America and Dawn's Uncertain Light, and the personal Armageddon of the Hereafter Gang. These works include the Aldair Quartet and other types of science fiction, westerns, YA books, very strange mainstream novels like Interstate Dreams, Perpetuity Blues and other short story collections, and wildly funny novels of mystery and suspense like the unforgettable Pink Vodka Blues. So when Armageddon arrives, other people can hit the road or huddle on the beach. When I face the end times, I'm looking up Ginny's Sweet Hips, and I'm taking the Hereafter Gang along with me.
I have to be trite and say I'm terribly honored to be here and to be awarded anything from a group of science fiction people. Science fiction has been my whole life. I could spend the night naming the writers from my life and the editors and the people that have given me anything that I have now. You know their names as well as I do, and I know some of them that are no longer with us. I would like to remember some of my old buddies, Julie Verne, Big Eddie Burroughs, and that Wells kid. I still miss them, but I've still got all of you people. And thank you so very much for having me for so long. And bless all of you. I appreciate it. That's all I can say.
Tonight, it is my really exciting duty to present the Grand Master of Science Fiction Nebula Award to Joe Haldeman. It is obvious why Joe was chosen for this honor. I mean, he has won all sorts of awards: the Hugo, the Nebula, the World Fantasy Award, the James Tiptree Award, the Ditmar and the Rissling, and dozens of others. And his novel, The Forever Peace, was the first book to win the Triple Crown: the Nebula, the Hugo, and the Campbell. His writing has covered the entire gamut of science fiction, from galactic war to time travel to telepathy, from space colonies to immortality to Ernest Hemingway. And his books and short stories, Mind Bridge, None So Blind, All My Sins Remembered, Tricentennial, The Accidental Tourist, Cranes, The World Books, The Hemingway Hoax, Mars Bound, have been both critically acclaimed and bestsellers. And he hasn't just written books. He's done all sorts of other things. He's written screenplays and Star Trek novels, poetry and stage plays and graphic novels. He's gotten an MFA in creative writing, been an adjunct professor at MIT, fought in Vietnam, served as president of SFWA, and earned a Purple Heart. That was in Vietnam, not in SFWA. Although, he paints, cooks, writes poems, is an amateur astronomer, and plays the guitar and poker. Joe deserves this Grandmaster Award for the person that he is, and also for the person that he was. This was a kid who wanted to be an astronaut, who rode his bike to the public library, who saved up his paper route money to buy a telescope, who studied astronomy and chemistry on his own and read the encyclopedia for fun. This is Kip Russell in the flesh, a true Heinlein hero. All that is lacking is the slide rule. This is not the Grandmaster Nebula Award, not yet. This is a present just from me and from my husband. It is not a K&E log-log duplex decitrig like Kip Russell had in Have Space at Wiltrava, but it is the next best thing, I think. It's a Pickett N600 ES, the same model of slide rule, slipstick, that the NASA astronauts took to the moon.
Wow, how about that?
And it's for you.
All of us, I think, without exception, who call themselves science fiction writers, mostly learned how to do it by reading the stuff they love to read. I did have other teachers. I did get a master's of fine arts in writing, and I had some pretty heavy names, like John Cheever was one of my professors, and Ray Carver was one. Good writers all. I didn't learn nearly as much in the 2 years I spent there, though, as I learned in a week in Milford, Pennsylvania, at the Milford Writers Conference of 1970. The one who made the big difference was Ben Bova. Ben has been the single most influential person in my life, in the writing part of my life. Because there in Milford in 1970, he and I were having a beer after the roundtable workshops for the day, and I told him I wanted to write a novel about Vietnam, not science fiction. And he said, well, you write up an outline in a couple of chapters, send it to me, and if I think it's publishable, I'll send it on to my editor at Holt Reinhardt Winston and ask her opinion. It's an incredibly generous thing for a person to do. Ben not only helped me sell that novel, War Year, but then some years later, when I wrote The Forever War, Ben was editor of Analog Magazine, and he ran my novel as a series of novellas and novelettes, which was great. But then I was trying to sell it, and nobody would touch it. I went to my agent's office, Robert P. Mills, the day before the annual SFWA editor-author bash in New York, and he gave me a 3x5 card with the names of 18 editors who had turned down my novel. And he said, Joe, it's a good novel, but I'm not going to sell it in this town. Nobody wants it. And fortunately, I ran into Ben Bova, and I told Ben my tale of woe. And he said, well, I have a guy who I think you ought to talk to. And he took me across the room to this editor who had never done adult science fiction, Thomas Dunn of St. Martin's Press. And we had a few words, and Tom said, well, send it over and I'll take a look at it. And he bought it after 18 professional science fiction editors had turned it down. And it became quite a success. My editors, Ben Bova, of course, from the very beginning, all the magazine people, Gardner Dozois and Sheila Williams and Stan Schmidt have helped me remarkably. I mean, writers outside of science fiction don't get a lot of help from magazine editors because they just don't, magazines don't publish short fiction anymore. But we have you guys, and thank you. Well, most of all, I've got to say, behind every grandmaster, or most grandmasters, is a grand mistress. I could leave it at that and just see what happens. But in fact, my grand mistress, of course, is my wife, Gay. And we've been married now for 44 years. She has been behind my career ever since before it was a career. And so I'm so happy to accept this award, but I want to make it clear that I'm accepting it on behalf of her as well as myself. Thank you.
And the Andre Norton goes to The Girl Who Circumnavigated Fairyland in a Ship of Her Own Making by Catherine M. Valenti.
Some of you know the story of the writing of this book. I'll be very brief, but it was posted online in serial form last year as my family was having a very rough time in the economic turndown. So the story, the writing of this book is a crazy kind of fairy tale. The girl lost in the dark, just trying to survive. And she turns to this very old, very odd, and very new kind of magic to save her family, and somehow it works, and she finds her way. But I never expected a glass slipper at the end of it. And I can't really believe this is happening. Thank you to everyone who believed in this book, which is very much off the beaten path, and who was willing to vote for it. Without a publisher to guide it, these waters can be very difficult. But this award is for everyone who linked to and supported this project, who didn't think it was too weird, who didn't think it was too different. I'd especially like to thank Amal El-Motar, S.J. Tucker, and Deb Castellano, who stood by me and provided a tremendous amount of support, advice, and instant messaging. Thank you to my husband, Dimitri, without whose love and technical expertise, much of what I do would simply vanish. And lastly, thank you to Mary Robinette Cole, who emailed me one night and said, "Did you know that you're eligible for the Norton Award?" And I didn't know, but today I get to stand here and be completely overwhelmed thanks to her, to everyone who voted, and to all of you. We are one big, odd, beautiful family. Thank you all so much.
And the Nebula short story winner is Spar by Keats Johnson.
It's really an honor and a great pleasure to accept this award for Kij, as much as an honor as it was to get one for myself last year. She did send me some remarks to relay to you. She couldn't come because she had ankle surgery and has been laid up. Thank you all so much. I'm sorry I can't be there in person. I even had my shoes picked out, pointy-toed and white with enormous blue dots. Since he's speaking for me, please imagine John wearing shoes like that. I'm thrilled to win this year's Nebula Award, particularly with a challenging story like Spar. It's a great honor. I would like to thank John Kessel for listening in on the drafts of this story, Neil Clark and Sean Williams and the staff of Clark's World for taking a chance in publishing it, and mostly and especially my friend and mentor, James Gunn of the Center for the Study of Science Fiction. Thank you again.
And the winner for novelette, Sinner, Baker, Fabulous Priest, Red Mask, Black Mask, Gentleman Duke. Yuji.
Wow, I've dreamed of this since I was a wee little fangirl, and now that I'm a big grown-up fangirl, in this industry is about the celebration and the creation of dreams. It still didn't prepare me. I'm stunned and blown away. But I did want to thank Getty DeVry and Andy Cox, who saw the story in the Inner Zone slush pile and deemed it shiny. I want to thank Jason Sizemore of Apex Magazine and Jeremiah Tolbear and Steve Ely of Escape Pod for podcasting it, as well as Lawrence Santaro for his fabulous reading of it, and Crispin for her encouragement and wise counsel for all these years, Jason Sanford for just being awesome, and to my husband, Matthew, for his support, his forbearance, his good humor and inspiration. I would not have the conviction and faith in myself as a writer and as a person without him. And I want to thank all of SFWA. Thank you for this incredible, awesome honor.
And the winner is The Women of Nell Gwynns by Cage Baker.
I'm obviously not Cage Baker. I am her sister. And wow, am I going to have trouble with my luggage going home? But thank you. This would have had her dancing around the room, crowing. Thank you very, very much.
2009 Nebula for novel. Paulo, come on up here. It is the wind-up girl.
This is fabulous. I want to say that this is a huge honor, not just because I grew up knowing about the Nebula Awards, but because when I looked at the ballot this year, I was so impressed with the nominees and the quality of their work that I thought, my God, if these are my peers, then I'm very lucky indeed. And that was a win for me. I'd like to thank my editor, Juliet Ullman, because she really helped me fix a lot of things that were problematic with the book. And I knew that they were problems, but I needed somebody else to sort of point at those. And having an editor who can steer your ideas to help you find a better path is a treasure, and so I have to thank her. I also have to thank Jeremy Lassen and Nightshade Books, because they were willing to jump in with both feet and buy a hard science fiction novel with grim, depressing environmental topics and think that that was actually a worthwhile thing to do instead of just nut job. And so they're awesome, and Nightshade Books has made a huge impact, and I have to thank them. And the other person I have to thank is my wife, Angela, both because she supported me all this time while I tried to write, and she had faith when I didn't, but also because there was a point when I was rewriting The Wind-Up Girl, and she said, but the beginning was just fine. Stop and go back to that and send it out. And I did, and it was, and thank you all so much. Thank you.